Hi, everybody. I'm Michelle, and welcome to this webinar hosted by BusinessNow. I'm responsible for our marketing efforts in BusinessNow, and today my role will be hosting this webinar. And I'm joined today by Digital Business Advisor Søren Riis Vestergaard. If you can wave and say hi, Søren. And also I'm joined by Digital Business Advisor Jakob Dines. Yes, and Jakob Dines will moderate any questions from you, and Søren will be presenting this topic today. And the topic today is highlights from the new Common Service Data Model 3.0 from the new Servicenow Paris release back in September. And Søren has handpicked different topics that he will dive into around this common service data model. And then he will talk about data governance and how that's really important for your company. And just some quick practical things. If you have any questions during this webinar, please use the Q&A function in the bottom of your screen. You might have to put your mouse down below to get it to pop up. And then there's a Q&A function, and you can ask any questions you have during the webinar and also in the end there. And then Jakob Dines will pick them up, and when it's relevant, he will ask them to Søren. And this webinar will be recorded, and it will be sent to you tomorrow. And also we will upload it to our YouTube channel. And more information on that will come in our newsletter. So if you haven't signed up for that yet, please do so. This presentation is around 50 minutes. And in the end, there will be some time for questions, the questions you have asked during or in the end. So without further ado, I think I will give the word to Søren, and please enjoy this webinar.
Thank you very much, Michelle. So I'm Søren Riis Vestergaard, as already stated, and I've been an IT leader for 15 years, mostly in the Danish and international publishing industry. And since 2007, I've been a business advisor, IT service management, consultant, and instructor. And I'm very pleased to be able to share these news around the Common Service Data Model 3.0 with you. And as the first disclaimer, let me say that you don't have to be on the Paris release of Servicenow to get value out of the Common Service Data Model 3.0. So even if you're at New York, Orlando, or whatever, this is still very relevant for you. Okay. So I'm going to present the Common Service Data Model using around 5 minutes, hopefully not much more to do so. You could use a whole webinar hours presenting the Common Service Data Model, but this is about the news in the 3.0 release. So that's where we will use most of our time today. So I'll present the highlights that we have picked at BusinessNow because we think they're very worth sharing with you. And one of the main highlights is how data governance and the data governance practice is almost a requirement moving forward in order to get the full value out of your BusinessNow platform. And then we'll wrap up with comments and questions. Okay, so during the presentation, I will be sharing some quotes from the CSDM 3.0 white paper with you, because these are sort of directly from the horse's mouth. This is what Servicenow are stating as their perspective on the Common Service Data Model and their recommendations. So now they're presenting the Common Service Data Model as a standard and a shared set of service-related definitions across products and platform. So they're moving towards a more standard, instead of saying, well, you can use this or not. This is more, there's more power behind this statement that is actually a standard. So why do we need this? Why is it relevant for us? If we start at the top left here, it's about creating one unified ServiceNow platform data model. Not only unified in each ServiceNow customer instance, but also across ServiceNow customers, so that enhancements done to the platform will be shared for all customers who are sort of buying into the common service data model. So it's a backbone for the ServiceNow product portfolio, and it also has the perspective, and that's what ServiceNow, they've been very open, saying, we started at ServiceNow reinventing the wheel in different applications, and we need to have, for our own sake, a shared data model behind the platform, or as a foundation for the platform. Moving in the direction of the clock, the data model will enable good decision making for you as a ServiceNow customer, in the sense that if you adhere to the model, you will be able to answer questions like, if we change this technical component, how will it in fact impact the business? Or from a top-down perspective, if we change the business environment somehow and things change, where should we focus our investments? So this is a prescriptive definition of service-related data, and it will give ServiceNow customers a jump start, because it connects what the business actually does to how our services, our HR, IT, whatever services support the business. And it's out of the box. It comes sort of automatically if you adhere to the data model. So there's no need to invent a freestanding enterprise architecture model. You can use the one in ServiceNow as a practice, as a starting point, and perhaps adding to it, but everything in the model is represented in the physical tables and relationships in ServiceNow. So moving on to the final point, bottom left, it will finally and hopefully deliver on the promise of a shared CMDB. Okay, and CMDB not meaning only a technical resource, but a CMDB which is comprehensive, moving from business to strategy, tactical, operational perspectives. So this is what this slide is actually saying, that it connects enterprise architecture, application portfolio management, connects it with this through the CMDB to the day-to-day operation. So whatever goes on in your incident problem management, your change enablement or change management practice, it will be reflected on the strategic level and vice versa. So it's a unifier. The common service data model is a unifier of data and information and knowledge within ServiceNow. So just a quick overview of the model, and it will be quick because I will be moving on to different subjects, but we have a customer or consumer perspective in the model. So this is where business relation managers from the provider connects to the business consumer or the customer, using business services within a service portfolio management to present to the consumer through different business service offerings, and some of them will be represented in the request catalog. And then we have the service provider view as opposed to the consumer customer view. So this is the technical services. And if we move to the right in this orange figure, we will see all the technical stuff in the bottom right here, where it says application server, information, Internet of Things, and network, and different infrastructure. So the application services each represent a deployed application stack with all the connected infrastructure underneath. And these application services are part of the technical service offerings. Some of them will be building blocks for service owners to build customer-facing services, and some of them will be more like internal service provider services. And then we have the most strategic perspective of the model, which is the enterprise architect view here, the design view, where we have the business, what the business actually does, the business capabilities represented, supported by business applications, and the databases and information related to the business applications. So the final one, the foundation, is new in version 3.0, and we will dive into that a bit later. But this is about being in control with all the data and information which is referenced from the rest of the model. So if the quality of the data here, company, business unit, department, location, groups, users, etc., if the data quality here is not sort of good enough, then the knowledge and wisdom you can gain from the rest of the ServiceNow platform will be challenged. And we have a new role here, which I will return to, which is the data steward role. Okay. And in the middle of everything, we have the service owner, which sort of takes all the technical stuff and on the basis of the business capabilities will be responsible, accountable for services presented to the customers, to the users. So this is sort of in the center of the model. Okay, so the big new thing here in 3.0 is the foundation. And one more quote from the CSDM white paper, the scope of the model will continually be extended and include more prescriptive guidance in the use of the data model. So what does that mean? Prescriptive means telling how something should be done, rather than how it is actually done. So a prescriptive model is a model that actually tells you this is what you should be doing. And if you don't, well, who knows? But ServiceNow is saying this is a prescriptive model more and more as ServiceNow are moving forward. And this is a new message, which is sort of enforced in the CSDM 3.0. And I think it's worth considering what it means for you as a ServiceNow customer, a ServiceNow user, that if you do not adhere to the model, then ServiceNow is sort of stating you will not get the value out of the platform, and you will not get standard reports that you can rely upon to make informed decisions. Okay, so selected Common Service Data Model 3.0 highlights. What are they? Okay, so highlights which are covered here. We will take a look at the foundation dimension and dive a bit into that and say what does that mean that it has been included in the model, and how can you get inspiration from having the foundation dimension included in the model. Then we will use some time presenting data governance as more and more of a prescriptive requirement. And this is very much BusinessNow's interpretation of the model. So you may agree or disagree, you're very welcome, but it's sort of saying, in order to move forward in the ServiceNow, as a ServiceNow customer, you should probably consider doing more formal data governance that you may have been doing in the past. And we meet many ServiceNow customers, and we sort of know what goes on at most ServiceNow customers, at least in Denmark and in Sweden. So third subject here is integrating enterprise architecture into daily decision making. I think this is wonderful that it's one of the potential benefits of using the model and adhering to the model, that we connect this, and I will say more about that later. And then ServiceNow in the CSDM 3.0, they are now selling or giving the advice that the relationship types used to tie all these entities together in the model are prescribed. You should not use other relationship types than the one in the model for connecting these entities. So this is more a prescription than it has been in the past. And the final one has nothing specific to do with the common service data model, sorry, but it's just that data certification is actually a platform plugin in ServiceNow available to all customers, which is ideal to support data governance practice. And I've been asking around all my colleagues in ServiceNow and say, do you see any customers using this fantastic, simple functionality? And nobody has replied. So this is sort of a secret, which is a bit of a shame. And I'm going to share the data certification platform plugin, some information about that with you today as the final subject. Okay, so the foundation dimension. What CSDM 3.0, the white paper, is stating is that the tables identified in the foundation domain are not used in CMDB relationship. Instead, they are critical referential data, meaning that they are used as referential data for the entities and the tables within the model. Meaning, the implication of this is that if the data here is subpar, then you will probably be challenged with getting the value out of the model. And I'm going to dive into that a bit more. But apart from the basic company, business unit, department, locations, groups, users, we also have things like product models, software models, hardware models, CMDB group queries, and contracts regarded as foundation data. Okay, so in the advice given in the CSDM 3.0 about how to implement the model in your organization in CSDM 2.1, there was the crawl, walk, run, fly metaphor. We start with crawling, we build some of the model, and then we go to walk, run, and finally fly. And this beautiful metaphor, which is like, I always envision when I see that, if you have ever watched Game of Thrones, it's sort of the dragons in Game of Thrones, starting as eggs actually hatching, and then crawling, walking, and then finally run and fly. But to this model in CSDM 3.0, it says before we even start that, we should get a good grip of the foundation data, the foundation dimension or perspective in the model. So what's the point of that? Well, the point is that if we don't have a good data governance around our ServiceNow and our ServiceNow data, we will not get the full benefit of the model. So starting with how can we build this capability to get control of our foundation data, this is where data governance come in. So one more quote from the CSDM 3.0 white paper: the presence of data within the model provides little value without governance and effective process to manage the veracity of said data. So this is sort of before anything else, let's get a good grip on the foundation data. And how can we do that? We can do it by ensuring that we have good data governance implemented around this. So I'm going to dive into this a bit more. So data governance. Why do we want data governance? What are the business drivers? Well, we have found sort of 7 business drivers. Maybe not all of them are relevant for you, but it's about creating one shared business understanding of data definition, starting from the top here. So one thing which is fundamental in data governance is ensuring that if we have a certain entity, let's say a service or even a business service, do we have a shared common understanding of what we mean by that? It's part of our language. It's actually one of the main benefits of ITIL is that ITIL has helped us create a common understanding, a common vocabulary around service management. And likewise, if we start registering and using and relying data, we should have a common shared understanding about how this data is actually what it means to us. We should also use governance because we want to avoid silos with inconsistent data. So meaning that one part of the organization is registering some data in one way, and another part is using the same tables, but registering using a different, let's say, de facto standard for registering and using. So one is understanding, the second is how we actually record and register data. So by that, we can ensure trustworthy data, correctness, completeness. It will also, data governance, help ensure that you live up to the data privacy laws or recommendations or rules in your organization or also in the society at large. It will prevent data errors and misuse because data will, on a controlled, regular basis, be assessed for its quality, its completeness and correctness. And if we do all this, we will increase the accuracy of the analytics, meaning that when we use the data in Servicenow to make informed decisions, that they are in fact both fact-based and informed, and therefore they are as good as they can be. And referring to a beautiful model coming from knowledge management practice, this one is taken from the ITIL recommendations. It's moving from data to information to knowledge to wisdom. So wisdom means making informed decisions and acting upon those decisions, bringing them to life, implementing good decisions, good models, good practice in your organization. And informed decision means that we have the required knowledge to make these informed decisions. And without information and data of us, which is complete and correct, there's no way to gain the knowledge. It will be guess, it will be assumptions, and it will be uninformed decisions, you could say, worst case scenario. And I'm not saying that we should make objective decisions, because I don't believe in objectivity, because we are all somehow biased by our background, by our preferences. But what we can do is to use facts to guide us as much as possible to gain a real grip of what is actually going on, instead of assuming that we know it. And this is what data governance will help you do. So what we see when we work for ServiceNow customers, what we see is that there are often data quality deficiencies in ServiceNow's foundation data, and that's reality. That's what we see, that they are not complete, they are not correct. It's difficult to use. And why is that? Well, some of it is that the foundation data registration practice in your installation or in customer ServiceNow installation, that practice was established very early, because it was some of the first data that we had to get a grip on when we started using ServiceNow. So it's based on this is what we think we will need. And things have moved on from there, but there's a good chance that the deficiencies coming from this is what we think we will need. The deficiencies are still there at this point in time. Also, data registration in many customer installation is done on local or personal preferences. You know, a person sitting in the service desk is very much focused on moving on to the next ticket and the next ticket and the next ticket. And if such an agent, if she doesn't have a good grip, a good understanding of how data should be registered to ensure that the data is valuable down the line, further on in the value chain, then the value you can get from your ServiceNow platform will be challenged. This is just one example. It's not to say anything negative about service desk personnel, but it's just to say that maybe we lack, maybe there's a lack of understanding and guidelines to help people register consistently and complete. So we miss guidelines both on the entity level and on the attribute level. How is an address recorded in ServiceNow? Something as simple as that. I remember when I was the IT manager in Gyldendal, we actually at one point hired 2 librarians to help us standardize how data was registered. And this is not an IT issue, you know. It's a data, information, knowledge, wisdom issue. It has nothing to do with technology as such. It's to ensure that data is registered, customer data, for instance. These librarians, they sort of went through and weeded out how things were recorded very differently over time, and creating a new standard for how data should be registered in the future. This is actually a very practical, operational approach to data governance. And I'm going to share with you maybe a more strategic approach of how.
Søren, I got one question.
Yes.
When you say guidelines, the question is that a prescriptive or descriptive way of thinking?
That's a good question. I would say it's a prescriptive way of thinking, in the sense that we want to ensure that we can teach our colleagues how things should be done based on fundamental decisions that are made in a data governance organization about what is the right way to do it. So this should be prescriptive. And a guideline is sort of a way of stating that without making it, I mean, if you say a rule, it's almost like it's a law text or whatever. So yes, I would call it prescriptive, definitely. This is how it should be done. Okay, just as an example, the final sentence here in this slide, we see almost as many interpretations of what a business service is as there are ServiceNow customers. So something as fundamental as a business service, in some installation, it's something very, very technical because it was defined by technical people. And this is not actually moving forward what ServiceNow wants a business service to be. So therefore, there's distinction between technical services, application services, and business services. So this is just one example, and maybe that would be a good place to start, apart from the foundation data, to say, do we actually have a common understanding and guidelines about how to use business service, how to understand what a business service actually is. So, who defined what this data actually means, how it should be registered, how it should be recorded in ServiceNow? Who is actually the accountable role for a specific data entity? Who's the data owner? Who verifies data completeness and correctness systematically on a regular basis? Who will actually record and maintain this data? And do these colleagues know how to do that? Do we have a trusted source for the data, especially when data is imported into ServiceNow from other platforms? For instance, we often see missing and inconsistent AD data used as data source. And AD from the Active Directory, there is a practice, and it's outside the scope of ServiceNow. But if we import this data, users, groups, locations, whatever, into ServiceNow, then we will inherit the deficiencies from the lack of data governance regarding the Active Directory. So this could also be a good place to start, to focusing on making your Active Directory a trustworthy and comprehensive source of foundation data. So two roles regarding data governance, which we can start defining: a data owner who is accountable for a specific bit of information or a specific entity relationship, and the data steward, who may be a role which is actively responsible for ensuring that the data quality lives up to the defined standard on a practical level. And the data steward role is actually part of the foundation dimension now. The data owner is not. It's something that sort of we in BusinessNow, and coming from data governance best practice, which is a role which should go hand in hand with the data steward. And my guess is that it will be included in future versions of the CSDM. Okay. So in a perfect world, this data governance in ServiceNow is an integral part of the ServiceNow governance, which is part of the general IT or IT service management or ServiceNow governance, and which is part of the corporate governance at large. So this is in a perfect world. This is not what we see in most installations. Closer to real life is that ServiceNow governance is living in its own bubble, which is better than none. And maybe very close to real life is that ServiceNow governance, including the ServiceNow data governance, is close to absent. So all ServiceNow customers, they have a ServiceNow administrator role, but this is not a ServiceNow administrator task to define and enforce ServiceNow governance. So one way of looking at ServiceNow data governance, like a minimum viable product approach, is to establish, if it's not there already, somehow a ServiceNow data governance board. This is the part of the figure which is to the right in the model. Some board where we can define what do we mean by a business service, what do we mean when we say a business capability, what do we mean by an application service, and in the CSDM 3.0, all these entities are defined. So there's a definition there that is, and that should be the starting point for defining this, but it's not the end point, because you have to interpret how you mean in your specific organization with the business you're supporting, what it means for you. So the definitions in the CSDM 3.0 of all these entities is sort of very general. And then as part of the ServiceNow data governance organization, for each entity there should be a data owner, which is accountable for the data quality. This is not the one actually registering data. This is not part of the data owner role. It's about having someone who owns, let's say, the customer table, or the business service table, or the assignment group table, and say, yes, I'm the one accountable for this. And then the data steward, who oversees data use, data quality throughout the data lifecycle. And when we come to the subject later on about data certification, this could be a good, very, very effective tool for the data steward to start using this platform capability to ensure that there's a data governance practice. So we regard the ServiceNow administrator as one role, which is crucial to having a successful ServiceNow installation, but ServiceNow data governance is something else. And the ServiceNow administrator would be very welcome in this board, but there should be others as well. And let's say if we take the next organizational level, somehow it should be connected to a data governance owner, which might be the CIO.
Søren?
Yes.
One question from one of the attendees. What about the service owners?
Yes, the service owners, there will be a huge number of service owners, and somebody should ensure that when services are defined, that they are defined based on the common guidelines and a common standard within the organization. So the service owner, should they be represented in the data governance? They might, but regarding the number of service owners, they should probably not all be participants in the ServiceNow data governance board. They could be represented in the board, but they should not all sit there.
So that's why it's not on the board, to clarify. They're not mapped on the board.
Sorry, I didn't understand that, Jakob.
So just to clarify, you say they may or they may not, so that's maybe why they're not mapped out on the board.
Yes, because the business service entity is just one entity, and it's very important, and that's what we are preaching. But it's one of many. Let's say that's also the business application entity. That's very important too. So should all those who are owners of business applications, should they be on the board? No, they should not. I hope that's a comprehensive answer to the question. Okay, so moving on. Some of the tasks that will be some of the activities within this data governance organization could be mapped out in a RACI chart. And I'm not going to go through this in detail, but we have like on the top row, somebody should define platform data governance policy roles, implement data ownership and stewardship, define and implement data standards, and perhaps a shared common data dictionary or data catalog. And then for each of these entities defined here, some roles should monitor and ensure data completeness and correctness, with the data owner as the sort of accountable role, and the data steward doing this on a practical level. And finally, monitor and ensure that information security standards are enforced, where we have the information security organization as the accountable here. And ServiceNow, the ServiceNow administrator, will play a huge role in ensuring this on a practical level in your ServiceNow platform. So this is just
very shortly
to start the ServiceNow data governance journey. If you haven't started it already, it could be saying, okay, we need to do something about this, and this could be a good minimum viable product approach.
Very shortly, any suggestion about how many should be on the board?
You know, I wish that we have like 50 ServiceNow customers who had sort of created a good practice around this. And we do not at this point in time, but I would say a good handful of persons should be on the board.
Thank you very much.
Up to 10. You know, board should probably not be broader than that. So some persons will be there, and a certain person, she will represent a group of her peers sitting on the board, not only her own personal perspective and preferences. Yes, so data governance is business, it's not technology. Do not create yet another organization within the organization. I can see that's a spelling error there. I apologize for that. So use who and what exists already, clarifying the roles, create new roles if absolutely required. And the most important aspect of data governance is ensuring the quality of everyday data registration practice. We have already mentioned some of the key tables entities to focus on. The one coming from Active Directory, the 3 different service variants, the business service, the application service, the technical service, and the business application. So these are some of the entities that might be first in line for creating data governance around these. And this message will be enforced by looking at what I call the CSDM backbone, which is actually the backbone which links from top down from top going down, the business capabilities, what the business actually does. In Gyldendal, it would be something like publishing as a business capability. It could be selling as a business capability. It could be evaluating manuscripts for validity and for commercial potential as a business capability. So this is very closely related to what goes on in the business. And these business capabilities will be sort of supported by business applications. And business applications are the applications that are what the business are talking about. So SAP could be a business application. This is a broad thing, SAP. We know that there are maybe perhaps 3-4 instances of SAP. There are different applications and modules within SAP, but this is the business application. This can be connected to the different application services, where each application service represents a deployed application stack based on the software, the server, the network, the infrastructure at large. So this is the backbone. And moving from the bottom up, we can say that the applications are supporting the business. And every time we do something to the infrastructure, to the software, we will affect the application services. We will potentially affect the business application layer and the business capabilities. So these entities and relationships between them are key in the model. Okay. Therefore, the prescribed relationship types are what we should use as a guideline, or even as a rule book in registering data in ServiceNow. So we have all this. This is wonderful about the CSDM. We have the conceptual model, the entities, the relationships on the far left. They are all mapped to physical tables in ServiceNow, and they are all connected by relationships where each relationship type supports how the model can be used for making informed decisions. And I'm not going to dive into this in great depth, but this is the rule book that you should be following, or the prescribed model you should be following moving forward. And we see customers, they have created all kinds of their own, let's say, maybe not even standard, but just a practice around how to define relationships within the CMDB, etc. And the CSDM should be sort of the guideline for moving forward, and maybe revising the things, how things have been done in the past. So, and I'm going to return to that when I wrap up. But moving on to the final highlight covered here, the data certification plugin is ideal to support data governance practice. And you should, I think everybody who has joined this webinar should sort of be curious about what data certification is. And I'm only going to cover this shortly because that's what the time allows. But the data certification is data complete, up-to-date, correct problem solver. It's free. It's available for any version of ServiceNow. It can, through schedules that you set up and define, trigger tasks that are assigned dynamically to people or roles in the organization, asking them to certify data completeness and correctness. These data certification tasks can run scheduled so that they are triggered every 3 months, or they can run on demand if you want to create sort of a once. Now we're going to make a check on the completeness and correctness of specific data. So accountable for data quality in ServiceNow should be the data owner, who should actually perform the data certification. Well, the data owner is not the one who actually maybe has the hands-on knowledge. It might be people, roles that are sitting with hands-on that should get this task to ensure the data quality is up to standard. And the data steward could do this and manage the data certification tasks and ensure that they are acted upon. Are people actually doing this? You can give them maybe a week or 2 weeks to do this and record their certification within ServiceNow so that it can be acted upon.
One question for that slide before you go on. If you have maybe 1,000 applications and services and you have a difficult time with having only one data owner, you may want to distribute it per service or per application. Is that the first line that you're actually referring to, that you can have many data owners?
What we are referring to here is that, let's say that you have a data owner which is accountable for the quality of the data in the customer table. This is the data owner.
Mm-hmm.
And there will be many people who are actually recording data within the customer. And these tasks can be assigned dynamically, and I'm going to return to that, so that they're not, all these tasks may not go to the data owner, but may go to roles and people who are linked to the customer table or the server table through relationships. So whoever has a specific role will get the task, and next 6 months later, it may be a different person because the data in ServiceNow has changed. And I think this is wonderful.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So it's not static, it's dynamic. So I know this may not be readable to everybody, but I'm just going to show here. Here we have a number of certification instances which have been defined in a ServiceNow instance. The top one, certified group, is actually one where we want to ensure that the assignment group are complete. The data within the assignment group is complete and correct. The next one, the number 2 from the top, is to certify that servers are registered completely and correct. And you can see on the far right that you can see how complete this data certification is at a specific point in time. So based on that, you can send out tasks to different people and they will have to act upon this. And you don't have to ask them to certify all attributes, all fields in a certain table. Here we have a server certification task where we only want to ensure that the servers are assigned to the correct persons. So this is just one field from the table that this data certification is acted upon. And given the time I have available, I'm just going to show you, this is the screen of how a certification schedule is defined. And I'm not going to dive more into that at this point in time. So it's time to wrap up. So even though the CSDM 3.0 is described by ServiceNow as being prescriptive, we can see that there are many ways still to interpret the data locally. And that's okay as long as you do it consistently and ensuring that everybody has the same understanding. So here, for instance, we have an example. I've taken this from the Now community, an SAP business application supporting human resources and financial management as two business capabilities. It's broken down into a number of SAP application services, which are offered to the business through different offerings based on business services on SAP. And underneath all this, there are the application service owners and the technology owners of the network, the service, the database, etc. This is just to give you one example of how this could be used in a specific organization. So in order to give you something to act upon after this webinar, we suggest that one approach could be creating a CSDM gap analysis to say how far or how close are we to the CSDM recommendations at this point in time, and how can we what can we do to close the gap using a roadmap, and doing the same, the second from the left, the Servicenow data governance gap analysis, and include that in the roadmap so that you're building the closing the gap between your current practice and the CSDM, and maturing the data governance practice concurrently. And then you take phase one of your strategic roadmap here, and you execute that, and then you review, adjust, and continue from there. So this could be one way to start. And of course, we will be very happy to help you, giving you advice on how to do this, and even performing some of this for you if you would prefer that. So this is sort of the how you can take what you have heard now and execute upon the knowledge you've gained. And moving on, we will the comments and questions section, and we have a few minutes to do that before we are closing this webinar. So thank you for joining my presentation, and hopefully there are a couple of comments and questions before we close down.
There is, but Michelle, I'll let you have the word first.
Yeah, I'll just quickly say that we're sort of 2 minutes over the timestamp that we put on, but I'll just say that everything will be sent to you tomorrow. So we will continue with your questions here. So we'll just extend the meeting maybe 10 minutes, but you can see it all in the recording tomorrow if you don't have time to listen to the questions and answers now. But thank you so much if you're moving on now. Thank you so much for joining the webinar, and you will hear more from us. And to the others, please stay and let's talk a bit more.
Yeah, feel free to ask questions. I'll try to give them to Søren. One question, Søren, about the governance. Back to governance.
Yes.
What is your opinion on shared role versus dedicated roles, comparing it to being, for example, an incident owner or manager? And where should these roles be assigned in the organization?
Okay, I think every time, this is my understanding, and I think it's a widely held view, that each time we use the term owner, it's an accountable role, and there should only be one. So if we say a data owner of the application service entity, there should be one. So the owner is not one who owns one record in the table. The owner role is accountable for consistency, completeness, correctness of all data within a certain table or within a certain entity. And this is definitely something that should be defined, let's say, from a management or leadership perspective. And the data governance board could be a good place to discuss this, but these roles should be assigned, let's say, as a defined role, which is sort of you need your own manager to say, now you have this, you are accountable for, you're the data owner. So there's some HR involved in assigning these roles.
Great, thanks. Now we saw the white paper that you presented in the beginning, CSDM 3.0. But what else can you do? One of the attendees are asking, what are the possibilities of self-taught learning?
Yes, I'm happy to say that there's a CSDM Foundation online course available in the Now Learning platform, and it's relatively straightforward. It's not comprehensive. It's not like reading the whole white paper. But I think if you're really interested in this subject and think it's valuable for you, then you should probably take the foundation course, the exam, getting the sort of certificate, and it's not something that takes a long time. And then in your own time, you should read the white paper. And the white paper is sort of divided into two sections. There's the whole presentation of the model, which is very much in line of what I presented today, except that we have given a BusinessNow perspective on this. So reading the first section of the white paper will give you the Servicenow perspective directly from the horse's mouth. And the second section is about the foundation, crawl, walk, run, fly, implementation advice. And I think this is relevant, but it's not as crucial in getting to know the model. And it's only suggestions from Servicenow. I think before you start following that model, I think the first step, the foundation, is a very, very good place to start. But whether the crawl, walk, run, fly phases are relevant in your specific organization, we should sort of think thoroughly before doing that. But getting to a good foundation level is crucial.
Okay,
so
I see still.
Self-taught learning, primarily the foundation course, the online that you can take in your own time, on Now Learning, and then actually reading the CSDM white paper.
I still have one question here, and please feel free to ask more. You can see that most people are still here. What you said that the CSDM 3.0 was with the Paris release. Is the expectation that for every major release there will be an update to this, or any idea about that?
Good question. What Servicenow is stating is that this model will be continuously improved upon and updated, but it will not be specifically linked to each Servicenow release. And as we see here, yes, the CSDM 3.0 has been released alongside the Paris release, but most of what we have talked about today is as relevant for someone on an earlier implementation, at least going back 1-2 Servicenow releases. So Servicenow will choose to release new versions of the CSDM when they see fit to do so.
Thank you. I don't see more questions now here.
Okay,
back
good.
to you, Michelle.
Yes. So yeah, thank you so much for your questions and joining in on this webinar.